Hey there, it's Wayfair here, where delivery and setup are as easy as a few taps on your phone. You're relaxing in an old hammock, scrolling Wayfair's app, when you spot it, a brand new patio set. Next thing you know, Wayfair delivers it right to your patio and sets it up. Oh, you need a new grill too? All right, Wayfair's got you covered. With Wayfair's Room of Choice delivery and fast expert setup on qualifying orders, life gets a little easier. Visit wayfair.com or the Wayfair app.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
Grading President Trump on foreign policy. That's the topic of today's Bold and Blunt. And I'm your host, Cheryl Chumley, giving you a Christian conservative look at today's news, politics, culture, and events. Do Americans think Trump can make good decisions about various foreign policy issues? That was the headline from a Pew Research Center poll conducted in late March, the findings of which were published in April. And I have to say, and this is really no surprise, it depends on whether you vote Democrat or Republican, right? What a shocker. Shocker. Republicans think Trump is great. Democrats think Trump is the worst president ever. Before I get into more of that, I want to quickly mention, if you like Bold and Blunt, you may get Bold and Blunt at edify.app, at Real Life Network. That's the faith-based news outreach of Pastor Jack Hibbs's Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills Church in California, RLN, as it's also called. Bold and Blunt, I'm proud to say, has been among its lineup of esteemed podcasters for a very long time. So don't just check out Bold and Blunt there. Check out all the other podcasts and video podcasts, or what do you call those? Vlogs, Vblog? I don't think so. I think they're just video shows. Check them all out. Whatever's there, check it out, because you won't be sorry. You may also get Bold and Blunt, of course, at WashingtonTimes.com, where if you scroll to the bottom of the page and click on the newsletter section and find the best of Cheryl Chumley, that's the name of my newsletter, and in it you will be treated to all the commentaries that I write every day, all day long. That's what I do. I slave away every day. Not really, but I do write every day. I do quite a bit of writing at the Washington Times. You may have all my commentaries at your disposal right in your email box, along with my video and audio versions of Bold and Blunt. As I said, right in your email box. Just enter your email address, and Monday, Wednesday, and Friday you should get them. You'll get them delivered in time for lunch, usually, so you can just sit at your desk and go through your email box and find the best of Cheryl Chumley. You may also get Bold and Blunt wherever podcasts are available. All right, I'm going to slog through this Pew Research Center survey because I don't like the summaries, so I'm going to slog through the summaries and then jump to the explainer. A new Pew Research Center survey conducted March 23rd through 29th finds that majorities of Americans express little or no confidence in President Donald Trump's handling of various foreign policy issues. Actually, I think that summary sentence, that opener, could have better been and more truthfully been written to say Democrats express little or no confidence in President Trump's handling of various foreign policy issues, because if you scroll and scroll some more, you find that among Republicans and independents who lean toward the Republican Party, confidence in Trump to make good policy decisions ranges from 74% on trade policy to 60% on the Russia-Ukraine war. So all the other ratings, all the other foreign policy items that were part and parcel of the queries to poll participants here range for Republicans and independents-leaning Republicans between the 60 and 74% approval. Okay, so that really is sort of burying the lead. So here's the explainer for that opener. Vast majorities of Americans, blah, blah. Democrats and Democratic leaners peak at 16% confidence on Trump's handling of U.S.-Israel relations, but that shrinks to just 7% confidence on U.S. policy toward Iran and the Russia-Ukraine war. So it seems to me that Democrats may have tilted the findings of this poll just a little bit, just a teeny tiny bit, maybe 30, 40 percentage points. I don't know. So let's go through confidence in Trump's foreign policy decisions. All right, let's go through some of the rating scales. On the relationship between the U.S. and Israel, 16% of Democrat or those who lean Democrat express confidence in Trump to make good decisions. 73% of Republicans or those who lean Republican express confidence. Well, you know why Democrats only 16% express confidence in Trump to make the right decision regarding Israel? It's a glaring answer here because Democrats are anti-Semites. So if Trump supports Israel, of course, Democrats oppose that. So another way to look at that is to say that 16% of Democrats or those who acknowledge leaning Democrat are not anti-Semites. I don't know, that's my takeaway from it. All right, bullet point 2, the relationship between the U.S. and Canada. Is this a foreign policy thing? Really? I mean, Canada's like right there. But anyhow, 15% of Democrats and those who lean Democrat say Trump has got it right with the relationship between the U.S. and Canada. 71% of Republicans say Trump has got it right. Again, this is good. This is good, right? Because it shows that Democrats, Party of Socialists and Marxists, don't like how President Trump is treating Canada that has moved socialist and Marxist, and let's not forget anti-Semitic in recent times. So this is all good. Good news for America. The more Democrats detest Donald Trump, and I purposely use the word detest, not hate, because I have a friend who hates when I use the word hate, but which is to say he really detests when I use the word hate. So I'm going to try and use detest. So the more Democrats who detest Donald Trump, that flows better too, because then you get that nice alliteration, right? Democrats detest Donald. Anyhow, the more that Democrats detest Donald Trump, the more that just shows that Donald Trump is doing right by America. Because I gotta say, Democrats, since Barack Obama days, you really haven't been looking like you like America that much. All right, next one, U.S. trade policy. U.S. trade policy, only 12% of Democrats think Donald Trump's got it right on U.S. trade, 74% of Republicans. Next, the relationship between the U.S. and Mexico. 11% of Democrats think he's doing the right thing. 70% of Republicans. Here's a good one. U.S. policy toward Venezuela. Only 9%. Only 9% of Democrats think he's doing right when it comes to policy toward Venezuela, while 73% of Republicans think that he is. U.S. policy toward China, 11% Democrats think Trump's got it going on, 71% of Republicans do. U.S. policy toward North Korea. North Korea has been pretty quiet, right? Remember under Barack Obama and under Joe Biden, every other week, there was a new nuclear test going forth in North Korea. I mean, the seismic shifts that happened over there to their land, because every day it seemed like they were setting off another nuclear test bomb or whatever it is they test over there, all their missiles and their underground testing facilities. That's all the news that was coming out of North Korea. And then the Democrat in the White House would come forward and shake their finger and just stop doing that. Stop, North Korea, stop. I really, really mean it this time. And then they do it again. All right, North Korea, I'm drawing a red line. See the sand? Here's the red line. I'm spray painting this line I drew in the sand with my stick red, so you know it's a red line. And then North Korea would do another test. And all right, now I'm calling the UN. That's it. I'm putting my foot down. I'm calling the UN, and we're all going to get together and write a strongly worded letter. Well, that's Democrat foreign policy in a nutshell, to all nations, foreign hostile intents toward America. The strongly worded letter is their go-to. And that's why only 10% of Democrats think that Donald Trump has it right toward North Korea, and 71% of Republicans think he's got it right. All right, let me go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more. U.S. policy toward Cuba. 10% of Democrats think he's got it right. 69% of Republicans. U.S. tariff policy. 9% of Democrats, 66% of Republicans, which is pretty good considering the press goes out of its way to find those few Republicans out there that just completely condemn Donald Trump on tariffs, right? Whenever Donald Trump wants to use tariffs to bring a nation in line with more fairer trade policy with America, meaning stop taking advantage of America, stop exploiting America's generosity, the press magically finds all these Republicans, all these the same group of six, right, that come forward and talk about how the tariffs are going to destroy the American economy and hike the prices on American consumers, and it's a tax, and we need to shut it down. Well, come to find out, it's actually 66% of Republicans think Donald Trump's got it right on U.S. tariff policy. 4 more. U.S. policy toward Iran. Only 7% of Democrats think he's doing it right with Iran. 66% of Republicans. That's an interesting one, seeing as we're at war with Iran. 11% working effectively with NATO. That's what Democrats say. They give 11% give Trump thumbs up on working effectively with NATO. 62% of Republicans do. And last one, the war between Ukraine and Russia. 7% of Democrats give Trump a high five for doing it right in that particular venue, and 60% of Republicans say he's doing right with this war between Ukraine and Russia as well. So there you have it. There's the rating. So I don't think once you start breaking it down and looking at it by parties that this lead in Pew, which you know if you're a regular listener to Bold and Blunt, I do love the Pew Research Center surveys, but on this one, I gotta say, a little unfair to say. A new Pew Research Center survey conducted blah blah finds that majorities of Americans express little or no confidence in President Donald Trump's handling of various foreign policy issues. Don't think that's very fair. I would say Democrats express little or no confidence, while Republicans by and large express vast amounts of confidence in Donald Trump. And really, isn't that what matters in the first place? Because we know that Democrats don't like America and Republicans do like America. So if Republicans are the ones that like Donald Trump's policies, then Donald Trump must be doing right by America, right? It's like those old proofs, you know, A plus A equals B plus B, however those used to go, right? If A plus A equals B and A plus B equals C, blah, blah. Anyhow, I have a great guest today, and he's going to shed even more light on all the great things that President Donald Trump is doing in terms of foreign policy. Not to say he's slanted, but look, you can't help it. When you go back to Barack Obama days and the devastations and the apology tours and the money to terrorists so they can build bombs, and then you go back to the Joe Biden days with the little puppet strings pulling them to just bend over backwards and accommodate any nation except America, and then you look at Donald Trump today, you have to conclude that he's good for America, and most everything he's doing on foreign policy is of benefit to America. Mike Hewitt, I want to thank you so much for being back on Bold and Blonde. It is so great to have you here.
Thank you, Cheryl. Great to be back.
So your experience, 31 years in the U.S. Navy, retired as Rear Admiral. You are now CEO and co-founder of IP3. What is IP3, please?
So IP3 is a company I formed in 2016 called International Peace, Power, and Prosperity. And our focus is to ensure that the United States and its allies remain sovereign in energy. And at the time, it was very much focused on the growth of Russia and China in nuclear power without the U.S. being competitive, which is even more important now than when we formed this company. But moreover, recognizing that energy sovereignty is the most important dynamic of the 21st century. And thank goodness President Trump realized that with his energy dominance campaign. But IP3 is designed to help U.S. companies compete and win against Russia and China in nuclear power, in AI, and supporting our allies' growth into sovereign energy.
So you must have a quick opinion on what President Trump just announced in terms of funding for the coal plants, reopening coal plants, starting new coal plants in America.
Long overdue. And I think fundamentally the whole world was waiting for the U.S. to wake up out of its climate change stupor and realize that we have the luxury of being foolish in our energy, as I like to say, but the rest of the world doesn't. And they follow the lead of the United States. And what the president has done through executive orders, through reclaiming our energy security, our energy sovereignty, and being the country of choice for energy exports globally is critically important. And coal will always be a part of that. I always tell people President Trump reduced more carbon in his first term by not being in the Paris Climate Accord than he would have being in the Paris Climate Accord. So President Trump is not about forgetting carbon. He's focusing on abundant power, baseload power, and clean power, all the above. And his support for nuclear is critically important to that energy diverse balance.
So again, this isn't a topic I had planned to discuss with you, but you just raised a question in my mind. The data centers, the whole matter of data centers in America, they take enormous amounts of energy, and there is some backlash growing. But I know that you also have area expertise in artificial intelligence and technology, and you just penned this great piece for the Washington Times about AI. Sort of connect the dots here between the data centers and the start of coal and President Trump's emphasis on energy dominance around the world and AI. Can you kind of draw a picture for us there?
Certainly. Thank you for that question. And so what's been happening over the last 15 to 20 years around energy was, at least under Obama and Biden, we were singularly focused on climate change, which decided that renewable energy was the only form of energy that the world needed. That unfortunately created an energy deficit in this country. And this was before we started to even begin to understand the power demands of AI. The power demands of AI eclipse anything we know today in terms of IT infrastructure and supporting data centers and that kind of thing. So I always distinguish between what we have today and where we're headed with AI. And AI will demand an exponential growth in baseload power to have AI as a tool of commercial use, research, medicine, and obviously national security. And so what's been basically happening is that the United States has found itself without enough electricity to bring AI to fruition. You've seen this in the last 2 years with commitments between large data center companies. I'm talking Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Oracle. They have signed partnerships with nuclear power companies directly. In one instance, they're restarting the 3 Mile nuclear power plant, 3 Mile Island nuclear power plant, to power data centers. So all of this to be said, there is not enough utility-based power for AI, but the AI providers have realized they need to bring their own energy with them, build their own power plants, if in fact they're going to deliver AI to commercial and military markets. That's a great way to think about it, because the ratepayers and the utility structures really aren't designed to pay for these large capital expenditures. I believe what's happening in the 21st century is you're seeing almost a privatization of energy through the lens of private capital, through the lens of economic growth. And the 20th century utility market wasn't fit for where we are in the 21st century. So all of that to be said, what President Trump has set into motion is energy dominance, but it doesn't mean the taxpayer pays for it. it means these large data center companies, if they want to provide AI to the US market, they have to build their own power plants. And I think that's where this is all headed.
You talk about the privatization of the energy market, but so much of America's land is locked up by the government for, various reasons, off limits to exploring for minerals or mining and so forth. So, what do you see happening with that?
Well, I think a lot of that's changing. I mean, you've seen a lot of the restrictions on federal land being lifted by the Trump administration to look for gas, to restart coal-fired plants, recognizing that much of our large industrial base tied to national security, such as military bases, don't have enough electricity to run their day-to-day operations, let alone what we call a denied environment with the Chinese or something even worse. And then you overlay that on the new requirements of energy for AI, for data centers, and you realize it's going to bankrupt our utility structure. So rightfully so, we're watching this reemergence of looking at federal land, of recognizing that wind and solar will not provide baseload power. And then thirdly, recognizing that the Chinese have gobbled up a lot of this very land next to our military bases to build energy plants themselves. And so I think the wake-up call has come from the Trump administration that we're not going to let that happen. And this country must be energy dominant and be able to export that energy. And I think you're seeing this play out with the Straits of Hormuz right now. The United States is much less impacted by the closure of the Straits of Hormuz than Asia and European markets. And that's because the president's drive towards being energy independent over the last 2 years.
Just one more quick question, domestic energy production, before we go into the wars that I wanted to discuss with you as a guest today. So you're right. What you said about this administration, the Donald Trump administration, opening some of these federal lands to exploration for energy resources is going forward. But you know as well as I do that the next president that is Democrat may in turn close them for environmental reasons and all that. So how much of what President Trump is doing now would be permanent for the long term, regardless of which party holds the White House?
One of the things that I have advocated for from a bipartisan perspective is that energy sovereignty is really a bipartisan issue. And the balance between the concerns about the climate versus the needs for growing electricity, particularly in emerging markets, is all tied to national security. While I watch a lot of the blue states demonize data centers or put moratoriums in place around building data centers, they're quietly also saying, but if you bring your own power, we'd love to have you. So I think much of what President Trump is putting into place, I'm not going to call it nonpartisan, but I think he's future-proofing these decisions under his watch that really will be immune to the next political party or even a political ideology. And that's not just wishful thinking. I believe the president is putting into place things that will create so much growth over the next 2 years that other than Joe Biden, who destroyed the economic growth of President Trump because he destroyed anything that Trump did, not realizing the impact of that was terrible to his administration. Whoever wins the White House next, and I certainly hope it's a follow-on to President Trump with a Republican agenda, even if it's a Democrat, I believe what President Trump is putting into place now will be bipartisan and be future-proof from a future administration.
Well, that's optimistic. Good news there. Let's switch now and talk about Iran. What's going on in Iran? What is your reaction to how Donald Trump has been waging this military operation?
Having worked personally in government on Iran's nuclear program when I was in uniform, and then watching what I consider to be one of the most tragic foreign policy decisions of this country, which was the Iran nuclear deal under President Obama. What President Trump has taken on, it was the most important foreign policy agenda item of his presidency, one that's been lingering for the last 4 presidencies, which is Iran was headed to a weapon. And he made the tough decision to not let that happen for the next administration or the next generation. And he did it recognizing that Iran was very close to having a nuclear breakout. And all that was created by the JCPOA under President Obama. In terms of the characterization of what he's done, I back it up 1 year to Midnight Hammer, when he took out Iran's nuclear program, and he basically destroyed it last year.
That was the bunker bombs, right? The bunker.
Correct. That was the B2s with the bunker bombs. And remember, prior to Midnight Hammer, the Israelis had done a tremendous job of reducing the integrated air defenses of Iran, demonstrating that you could come in and go out of their airspace safely, and taking out a lot of their infrastructure in advance of Midnight Hammer by the United States. Midnight Hammer destroyed the nuclear capacity of Iran. What it didn't destroy was the nuclear ambitions of Iran. So what you've been watching since the 28th of February with the beginnings of Epic Fury, it was really designed to end the belligerent behavior, the death to America, the death to Israel, the funding of the proxy networks, the terrorist chaotic activities in the Persian Gulf led by the Iranians. And that's really been Epic Fury. And it's really only been going on now for less than 3 months. The military campaign of Epic Fury is basically complete. The Navy, the Air Force, much of the missile capacity has been destroyed. I would say maybe 20% of the missile capacity is left in place. So when you hear about restarting the military campaign, it's really designed to finish out that last 20%. But what the president has put into place under kind of two heads: economic fury, which is the blockade of Iranian commerce, and then also the negotiations around this fragile ceasefire, which has been ongoing for the last 60 days, is coming to a head. We're either going to know in the next week or so. According to the Pakistani prime minister today, he thinks we're very close to a diplomatic solution. You saw the president weigh in today to tell both Israel and Iran to stop attacking each other during this ceasefire, and they both agreed to do that. The big open-ended question on Epic Fury is Lebanon, the proxy networks. Will Iran continue to fund these proxy networks? And right now, this isn't about their nuclear program, although President Trump will tell you his entire campaign was about the nuclear program. What we're dealing with now is a belligerent country that's holding hostage to international waterway. And that's really what the president is addressing right now.
So let me go back to what you said about their nuclear capabilities being destroyed, and I just want to ask, how do we know that? I mean, how are we drawing that conclusion? How do we confirm that as a sovereign nation?
So I think when you think about developing a weapon of mass destruction, a nuclear weapon of mass destruction, a country such as Iran needs three things. It needs highly enriched uranium, above 90% enrichment to develop the kinetic explosion. They also need a detonator or some kind of a device that actually can create that high yield explosion. And then thirdly, they need a system to deliver that weapon. From a capacity to enrich uranium, build out missile systems that can launch a nuclear weapon, and taking out their leadership infrastructure and their development infrastructure of their nuclear program, that has all been but destroyed. The thing that's remaining deep underground and impossible to reach because of Midnight Hammer is that 600 kilograms of 60% plus highly enriched uranium. So that is not weapons grade, but it is certainly above anything that you need for civilian use. So there's two things left on the table to determine whether or not they have a nuclear program or not. Could they get to that ATU? And the answer is no. Only America and China could actually get to that. So I'm not concerned about that ATU. What I am concerned about is when we walk away from this agreement, it must have the hooks in place so that Iran can't return to their nuclear ambitions, start developing centrifuges, start to develop physics packages, and redevelop their nuclear program. They could certainly do that. They've already done it before. So the key is to hold them down now that we've destroyed their nuclear program and go after their nuclear ambitions. And I think that's really where the president is focusing his efforts right now.
So when President Trump says the war is basically won, what he's talking about is what you just detailed, their ability at this point to develop anything nuclear in terms of weapons is dead on. There's nothing they can do about it right now. Is that what he means?
That's what he means. His military campaign from day one with Epic Fury was not regime change. It was obviously Iran's capability and ambitions around nuclear weapons. But the side piece to that was the proxy networks and their attacks on Israel, death to America. Remember, under Joe Biden, they were basically holding the Red Sea hostage. And so I think a lot of this was tied to free and open commerce, but the military campaign itself was singularly linked to the nuclear program of Iran.
Okay. There's so much else I wanted to cover, but I know our time is getting tight. What did you make of Iran's foreign minister a few weeks ago going to China and meeting with Chinese officials? What was the takeaway there?
Of course, that was on the heels of Trump's visit with Xi
Yes.
a few weeks ago. And it's very interesting. I mean, I would say the great power competition is alive and well. And the foreign minister of Iran going to meet with Xi was probably tied to something that I would say the Iran war and frankly the Russian-Ukraine war has become a burden to Xi. Economically, militarily, having to maintain a neutral position, but not really. He's suffering much more from the Straits of Hormuz closure than America is or the West. So I imagine he will remain neutral, but he's looking for a solution here that all sides can agree to. I think it's also important to point out that she is currently in North Korea.
Yes.
With Kim Jong-un.
Yes.
For the first time in 7 years.
That was my next question. What do you make of this?
Well, part of it is the 65th anniversary of the China-North Korea Defense Pact. But part of it is also recognizing that she has relationships with North Korea, with Iran, with other belligerent countries such as Russia, that he is going to maintain as part of this great power competition. He gets tremendous leverage from Kim Jong-un, being a nuclear weapons nation and being a belligerent country. In his mind, if Iran got there, he would be happy about that because it creates havoc to the West. But that's not going to happen. But he's certainly going to maintain Kim Jong-un's position as a belligerent in Asia.
Last question, Mike. Russia, Ukraine. This this is a lingering proxy war, basically, that America is waging. At least that's how I see it. I don't know if you see it the same way. You can tell me where I'm wrong on that. But any end in sight?
Right now, unfortunately, and I've spent a lot of time in Ukraine since the war began, and I try to let them know that the chessboard that President Trump is playing is a much more complicated chessboard than simply Russia and Ukraine. It doesn't mean it's less important to this country or this president. And I tell people all the time, he certainly is greatly troubled by the loss of life on both sides, particularly the 1.5 million Russian losses that we've seen since the beginning of this war. Putin doesn't care about human life, so that's not really even important to him. But tactically right now, Ukraine is holding its own. They're pushing back Russian forces. Russia's not making any advances at all. You're seeing drone attacks deep into Russian territory. But maybe most importantly, I think Ukraine is winning the information war. There is a lot of distrust and consternation amongst the Russian military elites and professionals that this war is unwinnable to Russia. And it's just a war of attrition. Ukraine sees it differently. Ukraine is fighting for its sovereignty and its territory. And Russia's thrown its best punch at Ukraine, and it didn't work. So I really hope we find a resolution. I would like to see the American government put a little more attention to this and not solely focus on Iran and other things. But I think right now, Ukraine is winning this war.
Mike Hewitt, it's always great to chat with you. Fascinating discussion, and I look forward to talking with you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl.
And that's another Bold and Blunt. Remember, if you like Bold and Blunt, you may get Bold and Blunt at edify.app, at Real Life Network, at WashingtonTimes.com, and of course, wherever podcasts are available. Tune in next time In the meanwhile, don't forget, stay blunt, stay bold.